Hello, this is Mark Pitts, and I was co-writer for this movie, short film, Mitsabi's Dream, based on the comic book Angels 2200, available online for free. So if you haven't seen that comic already, I would suggest that you turn this beautiful, wonderful short film off and go read the comic and then come back and watch this. Because this is pretty much a prequel, and assumes some knowledge that you've read the comic before, or at least somewhat familiar with the characters. I remember writing this script. It was over this Christmas holidays, and of either 2004 or 2005. And I remember having a lot of fun with it. The reason that I got to do this project was because I had been reading the Angels 2200 webcomic since it first came out in 2002, and I really enjoyed the story. And there was just no extra fiction written associated with it. It was a very contained narrative. You didn't really know what was going on beyond the ship that the six main characters were kind of stuck in. And so, since no one else had yet written anything for it, I decided to kind of expand on the universe a bit. Kind of set the surrounding stage for what was for the action that was happening on the tin can in the middle of space. And Peter Haynes, who helped create the comic and did all of the or most of the artwork, vast majority, and who's also the director for this film, he saw the fan fiction I was writing, and he liked it. And he also knew that the character of Mitsabi Kaseko was my favorite. So he said, I have this idea for a short film, because I'm an aspiring director. And I was like, oh, really? And he said, I have a beginning and an ending for this script, and I was wondering if you'd like to fill in the middle. And I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. Why not? Barely written anything beyond the little short story pieces until that point. So it was a nice little challenge. I'd never written a screenplay before. And I'm sure whatever I ended up turning in, Peter had to do a lot of editing with, but a lot of the essentials that I'd written in made it to the movie, which was really cool. There's no cooler feeling for a writer, I think, than being able to see the finished product of something that was originally in your head and now it's coming out on the screen. So it's very gratifying. So, Mitsabi Kaseko. Probably the most enigmatic character of the six main characters in the comic, and I took a shining to her character in the comic just because of that kind of... It seemed like there was a lot of holes in her backstory. There was a lot of stuff that could be filled in, and it kind of made her a little bit more interesting in that regard, I think, than any of the other characters. So I liked the fact that the prequel got to be about her. And of course, it doesn't help that it doesn't hurt that the character was originally visually based off of the actress herself, who is now Peter's wife. So, I'm sure that's one of the major reasons why they decided to do the prequel about her, because, they already had the perfect actress to play the character at this point. Eat flaming death, yeah. It's a nice callback to a line that she does in the comic book. And it was all a simulation. Yeah, it's a little cliche, but it works. That way you get to have a space battle and have no or hardly any consequences after that. OSI. And you can see, actually, if you see in the background right behind Mitsabi, there's a flag there. It's kind of stapled to the wall. It's actually the Alliance flag, designed by yours truly. I have no artistic ability whatsoever, but I absolutely love to create iconography. I love to create symbols, seals, flags, and trying to put as much meaning into them as I can, because I think it just adds that little extra kick that can help immerse an audience into a world, whether it's either a visual medium or a written medium. I still like to have that kind of iconography around. So I designed various flags for the different factions that are vying for power in the story, and a few extra ones that maybe we'll see in another time. Who knows? A lot of smoking. I mean, it's on the one hand, it was kind of weird for me to see everyone smoking because, at least, especially in the last couple decades, it's become quite a rarity in the States. But I symbolically, it was put in, I think, mostly just because, especially for the characters in the comic, the idea that they could basically die, any day, and so they really didn't have any long-term plans. So, smoking on a spaceship was just, kind of badass. I don't care what happens to me because I'll probably die tomorrow, kind of thing. So, I think it works as a kind of a symbol for the psychology for a lot of the characters. There's Alex. Alex the sex bot. A lot of the names that I used in the script are taken from from computer handles to associated with different fans of the comic who posted fairly frequently on the forums back in the day when I was writing the script. So Alex was one of our forum goers who actually did some nice artwork, some extra fan art for us, and so I named the robot after him. And Ben here pulls off an excellent performance. I was very pleased when I saw his rendition of Alex. And small point of trivia here: the music in the background is supposed to be a version of the theme of the Alliance, and it's actually me singing in the background. Thankfully, it's so far back you can't really hear it, but that was something that me and another Angels fan did just on a whim. I had written lyrics, and then he wrote music, and then I sang to the music. Just one of those little things that you can do over the internet in a couple of hours, kind of thing. So, but Peter decided to embarrass me and make it as the kind of elevator music. Although I have to say, if it has to be anywhere, being boring elevator music is probably the best place to put my voice. I think most of the dialogue here is actually Peter's writing, especially the naked humans blush all over their body line. I thought was a great addition. It really just sells the awkwardness of Mitsabi meeting a sex bot, possibly for the first time. Within this particular world, in this time period, they're fairly common, but it's something that you don't. I kind of saw as, well, how they describe it in the comic book is like the communal dildo. It's like a sex toy. It's not something that most people are going to generally be very open about the fact that they're using it. So I had the idea that Mitsabi up to this point has never really encountered one, and this is her first interaction with probably the most expensive and intricately created sex toy in all of human history. I love that CGI shot. You got to remember this was a no budget movie. This was done with you know desktop computers and duct tape and just a lot of people who really were willing to just give their time to this project. So I mean, given all those factors, I really like the way it turned out visually, and of course I think Peter has a great cinematic eye for making the best of the sets that he made and this kind of outside areas that he had to work with. It's just, unless you live in these exact places, it's just strange enough that you can kind of buy into the fact that this is kind of a sci-fi world. Even though a lot of these outdoor or a lot of these shots are from actual locations in New Zealand. Here we have the transition from the real world to Mitsabi's dream, hence the title, the simulation. I'm not sure how well it came across that that's actually the transition point. I'll have to ask people who have never seen it before afterwards whether they realize that that was the transition or not. I think this is really where the part of the script that I was writing really started to kick in. Peter had the idea to stage it in this mannequin factory, which I thought was a great visual cue, given that she's interacting with an artificial man. And but this is where I really started kicking up the dialogue, sometimes a little too much, and I'll touch on that again in a minute here. Angels is an interesting universe to play in, I have to say, just because on the one hand, you have something, especially in kind of Japanese anime sci-fi, it's kind of a cliche. It's like, all the men are gone or all the men are dead and you just have women, I mean, the cliche is to just use that as kind of an exploitation, to just say, oh, now we can just look at women all the time and, it's run around in skimpy sci-fi clothes and meet aliens who need women or something like that. And as for all the writing that I do for the Angels universe, I try to think, well, what's a more realistic way of depicting what would happen in a world when all the men suddenly go away? It wouldn't be like the cliched kind of B movie kind of stuff. There'd be a lot of psychological issues. There'd be a lot of social turmoil. I mean, all these things would kind of come out, and I try to hint at those as much as I can within the stories that I write within this universe, because I think it's really interesting. It kind of, when you think that modern society comes from mostly a patriarchal background, I'm just talking in the broadest terms here, but I mean, it really is. And then to take that all away, to take that foundation away, and let the society be completely now controlled by females, and suddenly become matriarchal. How much would change overnight? How much would the women try to preserve the kind of culture that was already there? It's an interesting it's interesting ground to tread and to explore as a writer. So I really appreciate doing that. The mole tracker, I think that was Peter's idea. I'm not sure what we had originally. There was something else that was using as a tracking device, but now I can't remember exactly what it was. But this is obviously a lot cheaper to to film. Originally, the story was a lot more film noir. I think at one point in the early scripts, it was even supposed to be all black and white. And really dark, and Mitsabi was supposed to have
a running narration over the whole thing, kind of Blade Runner-ish. But as Peter and I reworked the script, it became it still retained some of those film noir elements, but it was hybridized much more towards a more standard action adventure format. I think for me, it was a more comfortable step just because I had not seen a lot of film noir at that time, and so I wasn't sure how comfortable I would be in actually writing it. If I would get the dialogue right or get the descriptions right of what the scene should look like. So having it come back a little bit more to action adventure was more familiar territory. I didn't feel quite so much like a fish out of water. So this was a lot of dialogue that they were going through there, especially Alex's speech there. That's what happens when you let a writer have a little bit too much control over what's in the script, is you tend to get these occasional long monologues that are filled with terms and technical stuff, and it looks very nice on paper, but when poor actors are trying to say this while trying to act at the same time, it can get kind of frustrating. So I was pleased that the two of them here were able to spout out a lot of technical stuff and a lot of social political terms and faction names and stuff without tripping over themselves. And I like that scene with him grabbing the gun there, and he puts on the sunglasses because he's that cool. But here we get the another little nod to the comic, because the character of Mitsabi suddenly appears with a hat, a detective's hat, in the comic, and it's not explained where she got it. And here it shows how she got it. It's kind of one of the defining props for her character. She's a person who has a very romantic view about detective work, which is constantly clashing with the reality, even inside the simulation. This is where the rebels come in, the rebel team. I absolutely loved the idea of these rebel characters, and I like the way that they're, with the exception of the rebel leader, there's no dialogue that any of the other rebels have, but their personalities kind of come through in their actions, and I like how that works. It's one of the big lessons I've learned between writing a novel versus writing a script is less is more, almost always. I have to leave it up to Peter to do the really hard work of visually telling the story, and I'm just here basically to support him with dialogue when it's necessary. And Peter added the extra beat with her hitting herself with the board. I always tend to write. He punches left and she goes right. I always like I tend to write towards the serious end of the Angels universe. Ever since the comics came out, the overall feel has been a fine balance between humor and seriousness, and I tend to find myself leaning a little bit too heavily towards the serious, kind of grave and dark material, and it's usually Peter who adds in the moments of levity that give it the balance it needs. Alex going to find Barbie. Props to Ansel on her performance here. I think she turned out to be my favorite performance of the movie. Of all the characters in my head, I think this was the one that came out onto the screen most successfully. Once again, named after one of our fans on the forums who went by the nickname of Barbie Girl. So I went ahead and named the hacker after the same with the same name. And this is almost exactly what I had in mind. This really overly eccentric, wacky hacker that was going to help these, or at least seemingly help out these two characters in their journey. And I really love the fact that her personality clashes so well with the fact that everything around here is pink and cutesy, and yet she's got like an iron collar and like spikes over the pink. I mean, it's such a wonderful clash. It's a contradiction in really loud visual terms. I really like that, how their costume came out there. And I imagine the hackers as kind of a full culture unto themselves. Is that there are all of these political forces in the Angels universe that are vying for power, but the whole time there is a group of individuals who, more than anything else, don't really care about politics. What they care about mostly is information. And, a lot of times things go to the highest bidder, but still, as far as their principles go, is that everything should be open. Everything should be available. The networks should be able to flow freely with whatever information and access you want. And so I wrote the culture of the hackers, which is the culture that Barbie belongs to, as kind of being champions of that cause. Here we get to probably the most serious part of the film, and I liked how it came off, because you find this balance of having wacky moments, having somewhat serious moments, but then right in the middle of the film here you get a real good picture of a real consequence of having these artificial men who were initially designed to be kind of a substitute for male companionship, but of course they can be twisted into doing terrible things because they're just robots, albeit highly realistic robots. And Ben here kind of nails it as Alex, just talking about the consequences and what he's had to deal with, because even though he doesn't have a conscience in human terms, he has a programming version of conscience. He has programs that's telling him that his number one duty is to not just comfort women, but to keep them safe and not to see them come to harm. It's the traditional Asimov laws, but he's been programmed to do now the complete opposite, and so he has the android equivalent of a tortured mind, and he doesn't like it. The idea of being like a human and having conflicting emotions is actually something that his logical mind just says is ridiculous, and it's something he doesn't need, so he's trying to get rid of it. And you get a little bit of echoes here about Mitsabi's character in what drives her, trying to figure things out, wanting to solve puzzles.
It may sound silly, but I've always been a fan of detective movies.
She is physically challenged in that she's so clumsy. How much of that is due to lack of confidence versus actual lack of dexterity is kind of something that's left up to the audience. How much of her social and physical ineptitude is really just mental, getting down on herself. I don't think that's really been answered one way or the other yet.
definitely not in the movie, and not yet in the comics, I don't think either.
It's my dream. Either that or I
But
won't listen.
yeah, once again, I mean, I wrote a good deal of dialogue for this scene, and it can. The danger is always is that without action, the whole scene can drag when you just have words. So you gotta have someone who's willing to tell you as a writer for a screenplay. It's like we may have to cut this down in order to keep the action flowing, or else the whole movie's just going to grind to a halt. Fortunately, I don't think it does, but if they went with my original full script, it probably would have. Here, Barbie is giving the kind of key lesson, which Mitsabi is not going to get until the very end. The idea that he is just a robot. It's kind of a pragmatic film in a way. It's not. It doesn't come off very idealistic at all. There's just maybe a touch of it near the very end, but other than that, it's basically just saying, your romantic views about robots in science fiction is really, not true. It won't turn out the way that it turns out in other films and other stories. For any viewers out there who actually know how, decrypting stuff, how to decrypt, codes used in computers, I want to apologize. I mean, this is such a ridiculous notion here. There's a code in the alphanumeric spacing with prime numbers. I had not nearly enough computer science background to really do this, the technical part of this scene justice. I just made something up off the top of my head, and was halfway convinced that Peter at some point would tell me to rewrite it because it sounded stupid, but he went with it, so I was like, okay. But here, Mitsabi, this is kind of the first. The whole film, in a way, is kind of the first beat of what I see as Mitsabi's arc. And this first beat is her choosing her heart over her head, as one of the characters points out later. She knows that what she's doing rationally is probably a very bad idea, but it's it's from a moral perspective, she thinks it's the right thing. Whether it is from a pragmatic perspective, whether it is or not, she's going with her heart, with her feelings, and we'll see how it turns out here. I had written that, of course, that Barbie gets paid off by the rebels, but I have to say the mouse flail was not my idea, but as far as I'm concerned, it falls into the realm of being so utterly ridiculous that it becomes awesome. So I have to give props to Peter on that for making, once again, providing just that counterpoint. After that really serious scene, you have this really goofy fight scene to go with it. Very nice. Some real life stunt acting there. I think poor Mitsabi got really banged up on that one. With the power of medicine balls, she shall call upon her fighting skills, and Barbie's taken out. Took them forever to get that scene right, but it worked. You can see in some of the shots in the background, you can actually see a lot of the posters with fan art that both Peter and some of the fans have done over the years for the comic book.
The programming is gone.
I like the look of relief that Alex has here, realizing that the conflicting programming has been removed.
You know, it's once again like the equivalent of someone finally, letting go of their guilt. And then he kind of crashes back down because he can still remember the terrible things that he's done.
I wish to God I could raise pain. Why should you have that kind of luxury? Memories and pain.
And it's where he has the the neat line of, why should I want to be more human? I can't think of anything more inefficient. It's complete. It's as far away from Data from Star Trek as you can get, pretty much. Now we enter the final action sequence. I love how everything. I have to say it again. I love how everything's so sparkly and bright in Barbie's place. It's a great trade-off from the usual stuff you see for when you associate with hackers. When I wrote this scene, I have to say this. When I wrote this scene, I had envisioned that Barbie and the rebel leader were lovers, and you kind of get that. You kind of get that sense if you kind of read between the lines and the way that they speak their lines to each other. But I had written that either before or after the rebel leader shoots Barbie, that she give her a full-on kiss on the mouth, because I just thought it really kind of sold her as the main kind of villain of the story. And I lobbied really hard for that, and they just didn't pull it off. So I'm just going to say this right now. Peter, if you're listening to this, when we do the special super-duper edition of this movie, even if we need to pull in the CGI, I want that kiss in there somewhere. Either before or after she shoots her. That's my only complaint. I'll let everything else go. I need that kiss. And now I think this was filmed in a laser tag arena or something like that. That's what I remember, I think, Peter telling me. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there for filming because I was in graduate school in Hawaii, and they were filming during the I think it was during the school year in New Zealand, so I couldn't get out there. I was too busy. It's too bad. Hopefully one of these days I'll catch Peter at a time when he's shooting something and I can see how they do it, because I'm curious to actually be on a set. I've never been on one before. I love the smiley face sight. It's a great that and the Hello Kitty symbol is so hilarious. And troops a little. The Alliance troops a little heavy on the lipstick, but it's kind of weird to have female troops going into battle with lipstick on. I mean, I don't know. Do they really do that? Do female soldiers really do that? I don't know. But like I've said before, I love how the rebels here interact as a team. I really hope that later on in the comic we actually get to see them, because of course this is just a simulation, so when they all get killed, it's just fake. I like to think that these simulations are based on a real group of rebels that are known to the Alliance, and so that they actually exist somewhere in the world, and I'd love to see them show up in the comic. Pistol versus Gatling gun, and the pistol wins. What do you know? And there's the sniper rebel. I think she might be my favorite. She's got this Boba Fett kind of vibe to her, I think. She never ever talks, but she's constantly, around doing badass stuff. And she makes it out. She makes it through the simulation in one piece, unlike most of the rebels. That's the ninja rebel. Very cool. She's going to take on a person with a gun with a sword, and you know how that ends up most of the time. Boba Fett's got her in her sights. So here Alex gets to have his last great heroic moment before he the ones and zeros kick in.
How can you still be alive? You're shot through the heart.
Gets that nice little one-liner there. It's a non-vital organ. Very nice line. I probably didn't write it. That was probably Peter. Here's the the showdown, where Mitsabi makes her ultimate choice, because of course she has no idea at this point that it's a simulation, and she chooses to basically destroy any potential career she might have in order to protect, this robot who just seems like he's a human. It speaks a lot about her naivete, but also a lot about how much of a heart she actually has. And I think part of the tragedy of her character arc is that, as has already begun to be revealed in the comics so far, is that she's starting to lose that. She's being hit by so many examples of how stupid it is to follow one's emotions that she's really starting to shut that part of herself down. And we'll see, hopefully, how that turns out as the comic continues and then get to the end of the major story arc. Dun dun dun! The rebel leader appears with the remote control for Alex, as it were. Right there, you can see it right there in her left hand. There's a lot of, you can see a lot of old-fashioned, controls and circuits in Barbie's place, but I thought that actually worked, because I always saw Barbie as being someone who was very eccentric and would take, centuries-old computer technology and use it as decorations around her place. So the low-budget, aspect there for the film, I think, kind of worked from a story point of view. And the fateful shot in the back. And pretty much within the simulation world, Alex is now gone. He's back to his original assassin programming, although at this point now he doesn't have any of the original sexbot benign programming left in him. So now he's just kind of a cold-blooded killer that the rebels can use. So that's where Mitsabi's heart basically is now within her, kind of half-dead, bleeding out. And this is the kind of experiences that she has when she walks into the rest of the comic. And I think if you watch this and then read the comic from the beginning again, it adds a very nice extra dimension to her character to see what she's been through. This is the actual Alex sexbot who has been interacting with her within the simulation. So now she's back in the real world. And she gets, I think I was the one that wrote in the fact that she slaps him, because I wanted to have that kind of last outburst of rage that she'd been betrayed, not just by the robot, but by her own feelings, at least from her point of view.
I would like to stress that you came with an Annette's father court martial cadet. Your
Getting chewed out by the CO.
I acted as I thought best, ma'am.
No, cadet, that's the problem.
She's really young. I mean, within the story, she's really young at this point. She's like, I think she's 17, somewhere around there. She's maybe plus or minus a year. But the idea is that the war has been going on for so long at this point that they're basically hitting the bottom of the barrel with the draftees, not just in skill but in age, and that they've had to recruit as young as 16, and they're sending them off to war. I mean, it's a horrible thing. You wonder why there hasn't been a revolution at this point. Maybe maybe one is brewing. Who knows? But it's when you think about it, it's a real horrible situation that the Alliance is currently in right now, and the rebels, aren't really any better off. There's a quick shot of that flag again. Peter actually mailed me that flag as a thank you gift for helping him write the screenplay, and I still have it. It's a very cool little gesture on his part.
It appears you made quite an impression on Alex. He felt compelled to go out and buy you this.
Yeah, so here's the one little ray of light that the movie is willing to surrender to us, and that is that she may have actually, it suggests that maybe she did actually touch some part of his programming. Who knows? For the most part, robots are robots, but you never know. There's that little glimmer of hope. And we end on a scene which is actually in the comic book, at least part of it is. And once again, Ansel does an awesome job as Hammer in this really quick little scene. I think she sums up Hammer's character beautifully, especially in just that little gesture right there, blowing bubbles full of cigarette smoke. And Kes is also very well in character, at least in the beginning of her arc. Very cold and distant.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, huh? Our first commission.
A little pet elephant there. Never quite sure why it was an elephant. Interesting choice for a stuffed animal, I think.
I'm sorry, you're serious.
So, this is where they give Mitsabi the bad news that, it had nothing to do with her skill as to why she's now a private. It's just a technicality. They need fresh bodies just to fly ships. And so, she couldn't even get promoted, right? She couldn't even pass from a cadet to a private on her own merits. She had to be pushed into it because of a matter of convenience. And it really hits her hard. At this point, she's probably thinking that she really can't do anything right. And as I said before, it'll be interesting to see where the comic is currently. She's finally been given some respect and given some amount of power and authority. So it'll be interesting to see where her character goes. And yes, the story is continued. www.angels2200.com. Go there and read the comic if you haven't done it already. It's awesome. So, here we are at the ending credits, and just want to say once more a big thank you to Peter Haynes for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this movie project. To actually see something that I've written come alive on the screen. It's a really great, awesome feeling. And I'm really happy with the way the movie turned out. And hopefully I've written, a handful of scripts for him in the past. None of them made yet, but hopefully in the future. I think he's trying to get one made right now. It's let's see, what's it called again? Video for 247. I keep forgetting the exact title. I think it's called Video 247. But anyway, so yeah, maybe that'll be the next one. We'll see. So there's all the places where they filmed. Or some of the places that they filmed, and I think a lot of the filming they did was in garages and stuff, but the donators, yes. So here's a list of names. The majority of them, I believe, are Angels fans who wanted to see the film made. So they were kind enough to open up their wallets and their PayPal accounts to be able to just give that little extra funding that we needed to get the project off the ground. And also a wonderful rendition of the song Refrain My Eyes. I wrote that song, just the lyrics. I didn't write the music. I have no talent in writing music. But I wanted to have at least, a poem that kind of summed up what I would imagine would be the dominant kind of feelings that the women would have after all of their male relatives had died in this genetic plague. And so that's where the song came from, at least the lyrics did. And if you go to the Angels website, you can see the full lyrics. This is a slightly abbreviated version here for the song, but I really like it. It was really cool for me to be able to write the lyrics to the song as well. So that's it. See you guys later.